So NFL free agency is right around the corner, and for the Philadelphia Eagles, it's a huge opportunity to address and fix arguably their biggest positional need, as last season, the Eagles linebacker situation was just absolutely terrible, and it was a big reason for the team's overall defensive struggles in 2023. So now, looking ahead to 2024, the Eagles absolutely have to do something, and potentially something big to address that position. So who could the Eagles potentially be interested in as they're set to enter free agency, and what are the chances that they make a splash move at that position? Well, we're going to break it all down in this video today, and we won't waste any time. Let's get straight into it. So if you know anything about the Philadelphia Eagles and Howie Roseman, you know that there are a couple positions that they just typically don't invest very heavily in, and one of those positions is linebacker. Now, sometimes this strategy works out for the Eagles and they end up being okay at that position, but it feels like far more often than not, the linebacker play is always subpar. Now, one of the years that things were actually working out, having not invested heavily at linebacker, was in 2022, when the Eagles had the very solid duo of TJ Edwards and Kaiser White. Now, the issue is that once that season came to an end, both Edwards and White were set to become free agents, and the Eagles let them both go to different teams, with Edwards going to the Bears for around $6 million-ish per season, and White going to the Cardinals for around $5 million per year. And according to recent reports, the Eagles made no effort to try and re-sign either one of these guys. I mean, they just let them walk, which is crazy considering that neither one is being paid too much, and both were just coming off very good seasons, and shocker, they both went on to have pretty good years. Meanwhile, for the Eagles, the linebacker position was just a mess in 2023. Heading into the year, they were relying heavily on second-year player Nakobe Dean to take a big step forward and really step into his own as the team's starting Mike linebacker for the next several years, and many were very high on Dean coming out of college, and he was projected as one of the NFL's top breakout candidates in 2023, but instead, we got an injury-riddled season from Dean, where when he was on the field, he really struggled. I mean, there's honestly no way to really sugarcoat it. He was pretty terrible, but his main issue was just staying out there, as Dean suffered a foot injury in week 1 that sidelined him for the next 4 games, and then against the Cowboys midway through the season, Dean suffered a season-ending Lisfranc injury, so really, just a disappointing season no matter the way that you look at it for Nakobe Dean. Then the Eagles had Zach Cunningham, who they brought in midway through training camp, and he actually went out there and earned the starting linebacker position during camp and preseason, and then he went on to play a pretty solid first half of the season. I mean, maybe even a little bit more than that. Zach brought some toughness and physicality at the linebacker position that was just really refreshing to see, and there were times that he was just racking up the tackles. Now, the problem is that he was never really good in pass coverage, which was honestly a theme for all the Eagles linebackers this year, and Cunningham also got hurt a number of times at the end of the year, and that, combined with the switch from Desada Patricia as defensive coordinator, really caused Zach's play to fall off. I mean, by the end of the year, he was honestly just unwatchable. The guy couldn't tackle, he missed so many tackles, man, and of course, he still couldn't cover either, so that was really no fun to watch. Morrow was a very similar story. He filled in very nicely for Nakobe Dean to start the year amidst his first injury, and he had that great game against Washington with 3 sacks, and he did make some nice plays again at the start of the season, but like Cunningham, he really tailed off towards the end of the year. He actually tailed off much earlier than Cunningham did, and it was a similar story, missed tackles, not being able to cover anything. I mean, the game the Eagles played against the San Francisco 49ers, he lit up 6 catches for 135 yards and 2 touchdowns, so I mean, it was just awful. And then you had Shaq Leonard, who was brought in out of desperation later in the year, and it was again a similar story, missed tackles, not being able to cover anybody, and it was clear that Leonard didn't have much left anyway. It just looked like he really couldn't change direction at times. It was clear that the guy was washed. So just overall, the linebacker position was pretty terrible for the Eagles in 2023. The guys they had just were not playmakers. Like, they didn't disrupt anything really. You rarely saw a linebacker shoot the gap and make a big tackle in the backfield or make a big hit on a receiver across the middle of the field. Like, none of that was happening, and it really hurt the Eagles' overall defense. I don't think anybody can really argue that. Now, the good news is the Eagles have a huge opportunity now to go out in free agency, acquire some playmakers at that position, and put this problem to bed, as there are plenty of guys set to hit the open market in free agency that could be great fits with the Eagles, and the first one that I want to talk about is someone who we've talked about before on this channel, and that is Titans free agent linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair, who again, I have said in the past, I thought would be a perfect fit with the Birds, and that's for multiple reasons. One, the guy is in his prime at 26 years old and is coming off a true breakout season with the Titans, where he finished 6th in the NFL in tackles with 163, and he plays with an energy and intensity at that position that the Eagles just need. I mean, he definitely fits the description of a playmaker. He has good awareness, he flies to the ball fast, he hits hard, and he wraps up nicely. I mean, the guy's also pretty good against the run. Now, against the pass, he isn't amazing, but he'd surely be an upgrade over some of the guys that the Eagles had this year in that department as well. And perhaps the most intriguing part about the whole concept of Al-Shaair coming to Philly is the fact that the linebacker coach that he just had his true breakout year under in Bobby King was just recently hired as the Eagles' new linebacker coach, so maybe a move to Philly would be really beneficial for him. And also, he wouldn't cost too much. He'd probably go for around $7 to $10 million annually if I had to guess. and you could end up getting him on a nicely structured multi-year deal to provide some stability at the linebacker position as well. So overall, like I've said before, I think Al-Shaair would be a perfect fit in Philly, and I think Howie needs to go out, do what he needs to do to try and get this done. I mean, this should be without a doubt one of their top 2 or 3 targets as they enter free agency in my mind. But if the Birds don't end up with Al-Shaair, maybe another option could be the Ravens free agent Patrick Queen, as he was recently linked to Philly as well, with SI's Gilberto Manzano listing signing Patrick Queen as the #1 move that the Eagles could make this offseason, saying in the article that Baltimore may not be able to afford bringing him back with having to allocate some money to some of their current players, and he also said that Queen may be expendable due to having an all-pro at linebacker in Roquan Smith right next to him in that Ravens defense, and he also said that the Eagles just need to prioritize linebacker this year. Now, Patrick Queen is definitely another guy who fits the description of a playmaker. I mean, he's another one of those aggressive linebackers that can diagnose a play, he flies to the ball carrier and can lay a big hit, and also his quickness helps him a lot as he can keep up with ball carriers pretty well, and also he can recover in pass coverage when he needs to, and he, unlike many of the Eagles linebackers this year, is going to make opposing quarterbacks think twice about throwing across the middle of the field, and he's also a solid blitzer at the linebacker position as he had 3.5 sacks this year. And overall, he just had a really good season, registering 133 tackles and earning a trip to the Pro Bowl. And also, the guy is young. He just played out the last year of his rookie contract, so safe to say that Patrick Queen is a beast, and I'd love for him to join the Eagles. The problem is that SpotTrack has his market value at around $18.5 million per season, and it's just hard for me to imagine the Eagles paying that much to bring him in, but what do you guys think? Now, another guy who was linked to Philly somewhat recently was Panthers free agent linebacker Frankie Luvu, as back in January, ESPN's Aaron Schatz predicted that the Eagles would try and sign Luvu in free agency, saying, quote, "The Eagles will finally spend some money at the linebacker position by offering a big contract to Panthers free agent Frankie Luvu. He can play off the ball or off the edge, giving flexibility to whoever is calling the defensive plays in Philadelphia next season." Now, this was written before Vic Fangio was hired by the Eagles, but in his defense, we know that versatility like that could be very, very valuable. I mean, Luvu is a guy who can line up at middle linebacker, he can line up on the edge, he can drop back into coverage and play that role, or he can rush the passer, so he can really do it all. And he just plays the game so fast. He reads and reacts very quickly, and he just flies to the ball carrier, pretty much like all the other guys that I've mentioned as options for the Eagles. I mean, overall, he's just a playmaker. In his last 2 years with Carolina, he put up 111 tackles and 7 sacks in 2022, and then followed it up with 125 tackles and 5.5 sacks in 2023. I think he's a fantastic player that could bring a lot to this Eagles defense and really help shore it up. Now, SpotTrack has his annual value at around $11 million per season, and I think I would definitely consider doing that considering the upside and versatility that this guy has. And also, he's just 27, so you could bring him in here on a nice multi-year contract. Just overall, I think Luvu would be a fantastic addition to the Birds defense. Now, those 3 guys I think are some of the most intriguing options for the Eagles when it comes to the linebacker position, but there's still plenty more options. I mean, there's a whole list of solid free agent linebackers to look at. You know, you got guys like Levante David and Devin White who are available that could be great fits. You got Josie Jewell, who I just talked about in my last video. You got Jordan Hicks potentially as a candidate to return to the Eagles. I mean, there's just so many possibilities for the Eagles to look at when it comes to addressing the linebacker position in free agency, and I'm just excited to see the route that the Eagles take. But when looking at the linebacker position, we must remember that the Eagles still very much believe in Nakobe Dean. I mean, Howie Roseman said it at the end of this past season. They still have a lot of belief in that guy to become a really good player for them, and we just have to trust that he can do it. Whether we like it or not, we're not going to see a total revamp of the Eagles linebackers this year, because I just can't see a scenario where the Eagles enter this season with Nakobe Dean not being projected as a starter. So I think they could go out, maybe get one big name to put alongside him, but Dean is still going to be a starter, and he's going to be crucial for the Eagles defense next year. So can he bounce back from a rough injury-riddled season? Well, we better hope that he can, and you can give me your thoughts down in the comments on that, as well as what you think of any of the possibilities of the free agent linebackers that I talked about in this video. And also, while you're at it, make sure you drop a like to show some support, and also subscribe and turn on those notifications if you haven't done so already, and you don't want to miss any more Eagles coverage just like this coming throughout the entire offseason and leading into next season. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And also, if you want to watch another video going over 5 free agent targets that the Eagles could look at to reunite with defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, you can go check this out right here. Now, with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.